To me, the number one player in free agency this year is Paul George. And I say it's Paul George because I know that there's such a stigma around Paul George that he's not the great player, that he's more talk than greatness. Of course, we know about some of the playoff blunders that he's had, obviously hitting the side of the backboard and the bubble, the mantra of playoff P. We know all that. But Paul George is still an incredible player. And Paul George is still one of the best players in the NBA. That's why I know this is sort of a tangent, a side note, but when I saw the report that Derek Williams was looked to be the replacement if Kawhi Leonard is unable to play in the Olympics due to injury. And that was a little shocking, seeing as though, look, I understand optics-wise why you wouldn't want Kyrie on Team USA. I still think Kyrie deserves to be on Team USA. I still think, especially if you look this year, Kyrie is there. There's not many guards better than Kyrie Irving, even today. But if you want to talk about things that have happened off the court, if you want to penalize him for that, I guess I understand. But if you're just negating or eliminating Kyrie Irving from not being on Team USA because of his off the court or because he is on the court, I don't think that's right. But Paul George, I'm thinking like, yo, why in the hell is Paul George not the obvious player that could replace Kawhi Leonard? But I digress. Let's get back to the topic. I understand that Paul George has a history at this point of injury, and while it's not as extensive as Kawhi Leonard's, there have been critical moments when Paul George was not available for his team. And even Paul George has even said it. He's good as a number one player. If he is your number one option, you have a good team. He is that good, and he is able to be your number one player, and your team still be good. But he's not a championship number one player. He's not the type of player that if he's your number one, you feel like you're a championship caliber team. He's even said he doesn't think he's a number one. He's probably a number two. Again, I don't know. I've never heard an NBA player say something like that, but hey. And his time, he's had obviously a tremendous road in the NBA, whether that was at Indiana and a bunch of the conference finals that he obviously met up with LeBron James and the Miami Heat, whether it was the OKC Thunder and finishing third in MVP voting, and obviously now the Clippers. He, not Kawhi Leonard, who obviously is their best player, led the Clippers to their first conference championship in team history. So Paul George is still an incredible player. And the reason why I said that Paul George's free agency decision can drastically change the landscape of the NBA title, picture is because if he stays with the Clippers, I think that that's still, even though the Clippers obviously have underachieved multiple times, obviously with Kawhi Leonard's health, with Paul George's health, now having James Harden and Russell Westbrook, and I don't know if Russell Westbrook will be there, but obviously they need Paul George. And I still think even with the exit out of this year's playoffs, I still think that the Clippers are a title contender. And it also, with the Clippers being a title contender, it also affects how the West is seen and who are title contenders in the West and who aren't. I mean, I think that the Clippers, especially with all those players, including Paul George, is a tough matchup for anyone. Now, yes, I understand that the Dallas beat them, but we also have to remember that the Dallas Mavericks beat them without their best player in Kawhi Leonard playing most of the series. And honestly, in that series, Paul George did play pretty well. It was majority of the other cast that didn't play well. Well, if Paul George stays with the Clippers, I think, well, I don't think they are still a title contender, even though they haven't won it. I think they're still a title contender. I think that you still have one of the best, even though obviously we're banking on health and it's almost impossible to do that with the track record that the Clippers have. But you're banking on the health of Paul George. You're banking on the health of Kawhi Leonard. And hopefully they can, if they stay healthy, that is still a dynamic duo. And on top of that, you also have James Harden, and we'll see what Russell Westbrook does. That is a four-headed monster right there. And on top of that, I understand that Paul George is from California and obviously enjoys playing in California, at least what he says. If he stays with the Clippers, they're still a title contender, and I think that it affects the Philadelphia 76ers in a way that you may not think. Now, obviously, I think his other option is the Philadelphia 76ers. There's multiple teams like the Magic. I think if they can find a way to make a sign and trade, maybe the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, there's a bunch of teams that could potentially land Paul George. But the two teams that we're pretty much hearing is the Clippers, obviously the team that he is, could re-sign him, and the Philadelphia 76ers. Let me first say, I talked about this when it happened. The biggest domino effect of all this was happening with Paul George and the Clippers, was happening with Paul George if he doesn't go to the 76ers. All this started, and all the biggest domino already fell, and that's when Kawhi Leonard signed his extension for the team. And when I said that was the biggest domino to fall, I'm saying he's your best player. And we talk for the last few episodes, we've been talking about market. He's your best player. Kawhi Leonard, even though he does have a lengthy history of injuries, he's your best player. And the Clippers cannot win if you don't have your best player, which we've seen almost every single time the Clippers have been eliminated. Well, knowing that he's your best player, you can't expect, even though I do understand the case of, Paul George, he led the team with Kawhi Leonard being out. He led them to the Western Conference Finals. But you can't expect players that are not your best players to be making more than your best players. I think that is what sealed the deal for Kawhi or Paul George. That's kind of what sealed the deal for Russell Westbrook, and that's what sealed the deal for James Harden. Not saying that those deals are already been made, but there's no way that PG, Russ, and James Harden think that they're going to make more than Kawhi Leonard, seeing as though Kawhi Leonard is the clear-cut best player on the team. Now, you can argue, who's most important, cool. But who's the best player? That is, that's like saying, well, Steph Curry is the best player, but Draymond Green is the most important. And so Draymond Green, excuse me. Ooh. That's like saying, well, Steph Curry is Golden State's best player, but their most important player, you can argue, is Draymond Green. So Draymond Green should expect to make more than Steph Curry. No. So I think that was the biggest domino. And when you're coming to the negotiation table, I think what the Clippers are going to stand on is, while yes, you're important, while yes, we want you here, there's no way that you can make more than our star. There's no way that you can make more than the best player. I think that is going to either bode well for the Clippers in signing Paul George, or I think that that's going to essentially put the nail in the coffin with this Paul George and Clippers relationship, seeing as though the reports are the 76ers are willing to pay him the max. And obviously the Clippers could match that, but he would be making more than Kawhi Leonard. And I don't think the Clippers want anyone making more than the player that they deem is their best. So I think if he does stay with the Clippers, obviously he'd be taking a pay cut, but I do think that he's still on a title contender. I do think that him being on the Clippers makes the Clippers and makes the West still that much more competitive. I also think that Paul George is good enough that if he goes to the Philadelphia 76ers, I think that that makes them a title contender. I know we just saw Boston, and I know we just saw, obviously, some of the moves that happened last offseason, whether we're talking about Damian Lillard going to the Bucks, whether we talk about Pascal Siakam going to the Indiana Pacers, and it looks like he's going to sign a maximum contract with the Pacers. I get it. I understand. And obviously Tyrese Maxey is going to be important. But I know that Philly does have his bird rights. And I think Tyrese Maxey, I'll say it like this. If Paul George goes to the 76ers, and they're healthy, that's always the big thing. And I understand when we talk about players like Kawhi Leonard, when we talk about players like Joel Embiid, it's very hard to put a ceiling and a cap on a team because of the injury history. But I think that if you add Paul George to that team, you have, and obviously you wouldn't have to give up much because you get him for free agency, and they have a max spot. Obviously, you're probably going to lose Tobias Harris, but you want to lose Tobias Harris. Paul George has the Philadelphia 76ers have a shot to have a team led with Paul George, obviously, who led a team to the NBA conference finals. Tyrese Maxey, who just won, I think, most improved and one of the better guards in the league. And you have Joel Embiid, who is a former MVP, arguably one of the best players in the league. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.